Thank you for listening to American Medicine Today. I'm Kimberly Bonatti, joined by Ethan Euchre.
Glad to be here.
And world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Alfred Bonatti.
Hi.
Charles Krauthammer was one of America's preeminent political commentators before his passing last summer. And joining us right now to discuss a collection of his final writings is his son, Daniel Krauthammer. And he's also the editor of The Point of It All, a lifetime of great loves and endeavors. Thank you for being here with us, Daniel.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be on with you.
Of course, your father, for those that don't know, incredible man, huge political commentator. He was on Fox News all the time, as well as a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and writer in his own right with the Washington Post, all of that stuff. While all along being considered a conservative voice for the most part, your father had no issue taking on his own side with, his own logic as a psychiatrist and things like that. What do you think, and what did he think before his passing last year of sort of the state of the country?
As you mentioned, he had a conservative political philosophy, so generally ended up on that side of affairs. But as you said, you never really knew where he was going to come out on an argument because he didn't pre-decide based on what party or what politician he was supposed to support or what team he was on. He had some core philosophical principles he stuck to, and he would argue out logically right to the end point. And I think that's the reason that so many people respected him across the aisle and looked to his voice. He had certainly the frustrations I'm sure you and I and all of us have with sometimes what the state of political debate seems to be in the country. But my father had that too. He was always a true optimist. He was very realistic about the state of affairs in politics always. But he also had a real faith that the American system was the best that man had ever devised and that we had all the tools and all the infrastructure to correct whatever mistakes we made.
I love the fact that he started off as a Democrat and then he transitioned Republican.
And that happens a lot, actually.
Yes.
With people. The older they get, the more conservative they become,
But I thought it was amazing because he's well-versed on both sides, and he can really point out the pitfalls of each party.
He used to joke when people would ask, how'd you go from working for Walter Mondale to Fox News? And he would say, well, I was young once. If you look back at what he wrote, and I did actually in putting the book together, I was reading columns of his all the way back to the 80s. His stance on foreign policy really stood absolutely consistent all throughout those years. And it was really the parties that moved more than he did.
Sure.
And on domestic policy, which is where he did move more, it was really, as he explained it, him looking at the evidence. And as he saw the social science evidence coming in on a lot of these great society programs, he decided that they were doing more harm than good and that limited government was actually more helpful. And having seen kind of both sides of the political spectrum, as you mentioned, he really had a sense of how to argue to someone on the other side. And he always said he wanted to start with someone else's assumptions and use those to lead the other side to his own conclusion and not to kind of just yell at the other side. I think sadly what we see a little too often today, but to try to lead someone logically to your point of view from their starting point.
At least from my perspective as someone who fairly recently in the past 10 years got into sort of more of the politics and following what's going on in politics, I tend to think of your father more as the guy you see on Fox News, the face, the Charles Krauthammer on TV, but he was an incredible writer. So what's in this latest book, The Point of It All, and what can be found for people that want to read this?
Yeah, a lot of people just knew him from TV, but he was writing columns for almost 4 decades. Mm-hmm. And the book is a collection of his columns, essays, speeches, and quite a lot of never-before published works from recent years, but all throughout his career. Mm-hmm. And he had been putting this together himself before he became ill, and he left it to me to finish for him. And it really covers the whole gamut of everything he wrote and cared about, from politics and world history and political philosophy, which you'd kind of expect, and to a lot of deeply personal things about his friendships, about what family meant to him, his own life and career, and really his own philosophy of life, so to speak, of how to live a full and meaningful, satisfying life. And it conveys a really powerful message, whatever your particular interest may be. I think it conveys an incredible outlook on life.
Is there one particular passage you might share with us?
Well, there was one that I believe I quote in the book, an interview he gave. He was asked about the accident he had, if that changed the course of his life or anything. He said, look, everyone has their cross to bear in life, everyone. Some of those crosses are more visible, and some are not. Some are invisible. They're just burdens carried on the inside that no one else ever knows about. But everyone has something that they deal with in life, some huge challenge, the slings and arrows of fate that life throws their way. Life isn't about being defined by those outside forces, by having your path shaped by someone else or something else. It's shaping your own path. It's overcoming whatever might be thrown at you and being glad for everything that you do have.
And I know, Daniel, obviously people can get the book anywhere. I went into Barnes & Noble over the sort of holiday break, and there was a huge stand right there. And I thought, we're going to talk to Daniel next week. So people, you can get it everywhere, but you also have your own website too as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's in stores everywhere, but anyone who's interested, I would point them to my father's website, charleskrauthammer.com, and that has links to everywhere you could want to buy it, online and off, and also a lot of other resources about his life and writings and archives and tributes written to him. So charleskrauthammer.com is where I'd point anyone who's interested.
Thank you so much for being on the show discussing the collection of your father's final writings. Daniel Krauthammer, editor of The Point of It All, A Lifetime of Great Loves and Endeavors. Thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Such an amazing father. Just to grow up with someone that had such a great outlook on life.
He's very logical. So he's one of these guys, right or left side of what his normal opinion would be. He can look at it logically, like, well, I can see some flaws here.
I think if you blindly just follow one point of view, that can be very damaging.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on American Medicine Today, and we'll see you all again next week.